And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Rupert Pictou.
Welcome to Open Connection. I'm your host, Rupert Pictou. Our show today comes to you from the traditional and unceded territory of the Tsimshian people. In 1969, delegates at the Prince George Inn of the North voted by a small margin to turn their organization into a union. Since then, the British Columbia Government and Service Employees Union is one of the largest and most diverse unions in BC. On today's Open Connection, we open our archives to bring you this story from 2002.
It is reasonable, it is responsible, it is the right thing to do.
It was the day BC government employees had been dreading for months. By the time Premier Gordon Campbell made his public announcement, thousands of government workers across the province had already received notice their jobs are being eliminated.
People have been phoning in and they've been coming in tears. They are absolutely distraught. It's actually very, very sad to see people leaving and coming here escorted by some of their fellow co-workers into the union office to see what their options are.
Core Services Review asked fundamental questions of government. Is this a service that government should be undertaking? If it is a service that government should be undertaking, are we doing it in the most cost-effective manner? Have we examined the results that the programs that have been implemented have delivered? Those are fundamental questions that I believe government should be asking consistently. They had not been asked for too long a time in the province of British Columbia.
It's taking time for many details of the cuts to filter out. Even the union representing most BC government workers has been scrambling to figure out exactly who is being affected. Here's what we've been able to gather about the cuts in the Northwest. The largest single number of job cuts within the next few months appears to be coming in the Transportation Ministry office in Terrace. The BCGEU reports 59 positions will be eliminated. The ministry says the number is 37. As well, transportation offices in Burns Lake and Dease Lake will be reduced to just a couple of people. Also within months, courthouses in Kitimat and Houston will be shut down. The Corrections Center in Terrace is also slated for closure. As well, this spring, human resources offices in Hazelton and Houston will close, and the apprenticeship and training office in Terrace is being axed. And cuts and closures in other ministries are coming over the next 3 years. The government is waiting about a year to make major cuts to the Forests Ministry. Once it's revamped the Forest Practices Code and other regulations, it doesn't expect to need as many staff. The result will be the closure of the Regional Forestry Office in Smithers, district offices in Hazelton and Houston, and a field office in Stewart. Reductions in staff are also expected at the remaining offices. At the Water, Land and Air Protection Ministry, the Smithers office will also be downsized, and the number of conservation officers in the region will be cut. Also in Smithers, the Agriculture Office will close, and Energy and Mine staff will be reduced and functions eventually centralized in Victoria. Protest has been swift. Last Friday, angry government workers and others marched through Smithers to demand answers from their Liberal MLA.
So you think I enjoy doing what we can to do? And what has taken place over the last couple of days, I can tell you I'm not happy with what has taken place, what has happened, the number of people that lost their jobs in the last couple of days. I can also tell you I'm not happy with the number of people that were employed in the private sector, of course, in this province, that also lost their jobs over the last little while. 16,000 people from the forest industry.
Gordon Campbell is correct. We cannot sustain the level of government that we have now. My big concern... sorry, we just can't... My big concern, however, is how it is done. I am extremely concerned, Dennis, the rapid reduction in forces, and it's really going to hurt the town of Smithers, every community in the north. And as you're aware, we're the ones that send the resources to Victoria.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Rupert Pictou.
Thank you for staying with us. he worked as a private investigator, a provincial coroner, and served 28 years as an RCMP officer before being elected MLA for the Bulkley Valley-Stikine. Let us return to the archives as Dennis McKay shares his thoughts of Campbell's government cuts.
Here in Smithers, you make these kind of really deep cuts, and what happens? The community doesn't survive. Major portions of the community disappear. The lifestyle changes.
What kind of agenda is driving this government? Okay, this whole business of devolution of responsibility to the private sector.
One big concern of critics is the state of our highways, given the big cuts in the transportation ministry, but not everyone is worried.
At first, I had a real concern until I talked to Mr. Ramsey, who is the local area manager, and he confirmed to me that nothing will change. I've had a really good relationship with the highways transportation here, and Mr. Ramsey especially. Any concern I've had, I've gone out to the subject area with him, and if he can, he's rectified it right away, or he's made sure that something was done with it in the near future.
The Forests Minister also insists the environment will be protected, even once regulations are cut in the coming year, and many people in the Forests Ministry are let go. Other cuts may end up costing individuals, other agencies, and local governments more money. With the closure of courthouses in Houston and Kitimat, the public and RCMP will have to factor in time and gas for court appearances in Smithers and Terrace.
When it comes to court cases, then it's going to require that any member that has to go to court is going to have to go to Smithers and wait all day to make. Obviously, there's an hour each way to add on to the travel time. So it's probably going to increase our overtime costs. It's going to take some of our members away from the community during the time they're in Smithers.
The government hopes other changes in the works regarding fine payments and alternative justice, for instance, will make fewer court appearances necessary. It's also counting on technology to help in smaller communities, but not everyone believes computer kiosks in Houston and Hazelton can replace the human resources offices, which are closing.
I don't know that would actually fulfill the government's obligation to the vulnerable anyways, because many of the vulnerable may not have the skills, or they may not know how to utilize the computer, or they may not be able to read. They may have a disability. The list goes on.
Whether or not they're served at computer kiosks, many BC welfare recipients will be getting smaller checks. The Liberal government is cutting welfare payments and eligibility, as well as spending on a host of other programs, such as seniors' bus passes, student summer jobs, treaty advisory committees, and victims' assistance. By March 2004, the government will also eliminate funding for women's centres.
Women who come to women's centres, usually it's their first step of moving out of abusive relationships, moving out of situations of crisis, and then are referred to sexual assault centres and transition houses. Women come here for all kinds of support and service, accompaniments to court, and their relationships are ending. They're looking for advocacy with the ministry. Their child's been apprehended, and so you're looking at closing. They're looking at closing the doors, turning those women away.
Despite the protests, the Northwest business leaders generally support the Liberals' revamping of government.
I think everybody feels, and myself included, that it was a necessary step for the good of the province. In the short term, it's very hard on a lot of people, and I feel badly for them. And it's definitely going to affect the economy locally. But that's a short-term effect. We're hoping that in the long term, this cutback will benefit this area and the whole province of British Columbia, encourage investors to come back and make us a viable place to live again.
More details of how the government intends to implement its cost cutting will be revealed in the provincial budget coming out February 19th as the protests continue. But the full impact of the cuts and restructuring will be felt for years to come, socially, economically, and politically.
This is the defining moment for this provincial government. This platform of economic restructuring is going to be what carries this government over the course of the rest of its mandate. And it will either prove Mr. Campbell successful, and it will help him in the next election, or it may dog him over the course of his mandate, and he may pay for it in the next election.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Welcome back to Open Connection. Constructed in 1929 at Prince Rupert Dry Dock, the CRC hauled supplies to isolated communities, helped in the construction of docks along the coast, and ferried school children back and forth. Let us return to the archives as Bruce Wishart shares more about the CRC's return to Prince Rupert.
For over 50 years, Charlie Curry and his tug, the CRC, worked the North Coast and the Prince Rupert waterfront. Shortly after Curry's death, his family and friends started to work on returning his tug to Prince Rupert. And in the summer of 1998, they were successful, as with much fanfare, the CRC was brought back across the Hecate Strait from the Queen Charlotte Islands.
Butch Curry, Perry Boyle, myself, and a few others around the chowder here decided around the time of Charlie's death that it might be a good idea to get the CRC. And shortly after that, a column appeared by Ray Gardner in the Daily News saying that we should go save the CRC. And it just sort of gathered momentum from there. It really took strength when Wainwright Marine Services volunteered use of the Tug Cadell, and we therefore had the means of going and getting the boat.
Shortly after the CRC's return to Prince Rupert, work began on the restoration process. First, the wheelhouse was removed from the deck so the vessel's engines and fuel tanks could be lifted out. Since then, the boat has been stripped down further, repairs made to the hull, and the work of bringing it back to life began this past year. Longtime fisherman and Curry friend Freddie Letts has been putting in countless hours on the tug's deck and rails.
So far, we put the pieces around the rail, put new timbers around the stern. And we took some of the put new ribs up in underneath the bow there, new beams. We replaced about 10 beams, I think. And we're putting all new decking in here. And the wheelhouse has all been done by Randolph Mostad. He redid the wheelhouse. That fits in. You just take those boards out over there, and then the wheelhouse sits in after the engine and tanks and all that are put back in.
Built in 1929, Letts says the old tug has held up pretty well over the years, as only about half of the wood on it had to be replaced.
There's quite a bit of the top stuff that went, but the bottom of the hull is actually quite good. They had it up in McLean Shipyard, did a bunch of repairs up there, and put some new stuff under the keel and copper paint. It only leaks maybe deck bucket a day, that's about it.
One part of the boat that has been completed is the wheelhouse, which is currently sitting in a local warehouse waiting to be reattached. Another Curry friend has spent most of the winter stripping the structure down and putting it back together.
Anything that was rotten or anything, we took it right off. Actually, I took all the pieces apart, like the windows and the doors, took them all off and took them in the basement and cleaned it all up.
Mostad has done a wonderful job on restoring the wheelhouse. The craftsmanship is impressive and equal to the original work done on it. The wheelhouse is composed of a number of different types of wood, such as fir, oak, and teak around the window casings. One of the newest additions is a tongue and groove on the interior walls, which, by the way, has a little bit of Captain Curry in them, as they were transformed out of deck planking found in the attic of his old house. As we've already mentioned, one of the most interesting features of the wheelhouse is the fact that it sits on a platform, which fits into the foredeck of the boat.
So when they want to put the engine in, why, they just lift the wheelhouse right off. With that decking, you have a wide open hole there. And then you got the engine back in, or your tanks, whatever you want to work on, just lift the whole thing back in there again. So it's a pretty slick idea, I think.
As mentioned, the CRC's engine will be placed back in the boat before the wheelhouse is fit back in. It is being worked on over at Bytown Diesel.
This engine was actually the same type as was the second engine in the CRC, put in back right after World War II. It's a Cat D 13,000 model, and this one happens to be an industrial model that we're going to convert to make into a marine engine. Butch at Certified has the clutch, and he's making the adapters to put the clutch on. We are going to put the clutch on and get it running so it can go into the boat.
Although a lot of volunteer hours are being put into the restoration project, the end is not quite in sight yet.
We always thought that we would be shooting for 2004 as a completion date, absolute completion date, which is the 75th anniversary of the launch from Prince Rupert Dry Dock. However, prior to that, we would like to see it running in the harbor
like to have it so that people in Prince Rupert can see the CRC in Prince Rupert Harbor, and maybe that'll help thank them for the work that they've done to get it back on the water.
Restoring the CRC has been described as an effort to preserve a part of Prince Rupert's history, but a majority of those involved treat it as a way of keeping alive the memory of a dear friend.
Well, it's fairly close to me. I worked on the CRC when I was a young teenager. Used to go with Charlie up to Cassiar, deliver cans, and picked up canned fish when I worked at Armour Salvage. And I've known Charlie all my life. And I think it's a good project and something in his memory because he was the waterfront in Rupert. And I remember going on church picnics with him when they used to take the barge over to Digby Island for Sunday church picnics every year, and Charlie was the one that was always available to volunteer, so it's kind of touching that you've got volunteers to put his boat back together.
Especially when you knew Charlie Curry and his life on the coast here as a tugboat operator. I know him ever since I was a kid, I guess probably 10 years old is when I first met him, I think, somewhere around there. So that's a fair amount of time for sure.
Did you ever think you'd be here reconditioning the old tug, or?
Not really, but that's the way it is. I think it's a good part of history anyway, something to restore and then keep going. I think it should be a good project.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Rupert Pictou.
Curling has been described as a roaring game, with the roar coming from the noise of granite stone as it travels over the ice. The exact origins of the game, however, are unclear, but curling is widely believed to be one of the world's oldest team sports. In this final segment of Open Connection, we return to the archives to when Terrace hosted the BC Seniors Women Championship.
The 2002 BC Senior Ladies Curling Championships recently took place in Terrace. The top 9 district winners from throughout the province met for 1 week to ultimately decide who would advance to the Senior Ladies Canadian Championship, taking place in St. Thomas, Ontario from February 2nd until the 10th. Defending champ Mo McLeod won the title this year again. For the Terrace Curling Club, hosting an event this size was an honor, and organizers say they hope it can act as a stepping stone to being able to host other events.
I think for us personally it was a great honor. The main reason that we received it was Prince Rupert had to decline it, so we took it on sort of a, okay, well, we'll do it. And as I said, we enjoyed it so much, we'd love to do it again. And not just the ladies, we'd love to do the men's as well. We're thinking maybe within about the next 4 years, we might have the opportunity to bring the BC Tournament of Scots here, which would be all the ladies' teams. We've gone down to 8 districts from 10, so we thought it might be about 6 years, but now that time has been cut down to hopefully about 3 or 4. I think it would be fantastic. It would be the same. It would be great curling. It's a week-long event as well, and it's just great for our club. It brings people out to see what curling's all about.
Hometown team Terrace's Lynn Apauser Rink knew they were going to be against some tough competition, and the results proved just that. Apauser finished last, but they say this competition has been a learning experience, and they're walking away from it having learned a lot.
It was just an exciting experience. It was better than I thought it would be. The teams that were here from all over the province, the competition, it was just a wonderful, wonderful experience. You just make a lot of new friends. You socialize as well on and off the ice. You just get to know them, and yes, it's a wonderful experience.
The Terrace Curling Club has received tremendous amounts of positive feedback about how every little detail involved in hosting this size of competition was marvelous.
I guess the biggest thing was we had to organize our volunteers to do our officiating, which we needed quite a few of. We needed 12 officials, I think, for each draw, two draws a day. We also had to organize drivers for each of our teams. They all had their own personal driver. Those were some of the bigger volunteer things that had to be done, and everybody had to put in a lot of time.
Terrace's Mary Rowder was also the proud recipient of the 2002 Lottie Hill Sportsmanship Award, a plaque presented each year at the Senior Ladies Provincial Playdowns. Rowder says it's time to wind down from the tough competition, regroup, and focus on what next season will hold for the Apauser rink.
The season is part over, more than half, I believe, and now we just go back to our Wednesday night curling, and we'll have to get together and regroup for next season. The Valentine's Bonspiel is coming up in 3 weeks. That's the ladies' Bonspiel for this area, and we're hoping that we get some out-of-town teams coming. We have over the years from Prince Rupert, Smithers, Kitimat, and it's a great event, and it's an opportunity for the ladies to have a Bonspiel on their own and some camaraderie, and it's great.
As for the Apollo Rink's plans for next year, well, they plan on sticking together as friends and as teammates, a combination the team feels is their strength. Next season, though, the organization will be somewhat different.
Not that we know each other very well. We've curled together a long time. Our personalities seem to go together. We're friends off the ice as well, so we know each other quite well, and I think that is a strong point. We will probably curl together, and we'll look at competition. Now that the zone has been reorganized, it will be a little more difficult to get out of the zone. There'll be an interzone as well for the senior ladies, which is the first. So you would play the district, the Smithers, Kitimat, Prince Rupert Terrace, and then from there you would go on to an interzone, and so the groups from different districts the best teams would go and play for a weekend.
As for the Terrace Curling Club, things have wound down following the championships and are moving along at a steady pace.
We're back to normal. Every evening, Monday through Friday, we have our Tuesday morning coffee league, which has lunch afterwards, and we have our Sunday afternoon league. We also have our juniors on Wednesday after school. But yeah, it's back to normal. It's a little quiet now.
So it's back to the drawing board, and Terrace's hometown team is already preparing for what lies ahead and enjoying how far they have already come.
Just continue on practicing, and I enjoy curling very much, so it's a pleasure to come down and be part of it all.
It's taken a lot of effort on the part of many groups in town, but finally, something is being done about the old CN station.
Behind us here today, you can see contractors taking the awnings off of the building. This will go a long way to improving the look of the building, and the work is being paid for by Via Rail and facilitated through the City of Prince Rupert.
The work doesn't just stop with the awnings. Ms. Salem says a review is currently being conducted to see if renovation is viable and if other tenants can be moved in. The station isn't the only thing in this part of town being worked on. Crews have started grading the lot next door for the city's new waterfront park.
The design of the waterfront park calls for viewing areas where people can look out over the water. There's some areas which will have other marine memorabilia, as well as grassed areas where people can certainly get close to the water and enjoy the area.
Ms. Salem says the work on the park will be shared between local contractors and city crews.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Open Connection. The greatest distance in the existence of man is not from here to there, but the connection from his mind and heart. If we can conquer that distance, we can soar like an eagle and realize our mystery within. I'm Rupert Pictou.